And this is the show you've all been waiting for. Welcome to Power Search. This is part two. Okay, just one hand, two. This is part two with Holly Porter. In part one, we talked about near death experiences. And today she's going to go over some of her spiritual transformation experiences and her out of body experiences. And I'll tell you what, I am so excited. I can hardly wait. In fact, I'm so excited. I'm just going to jump right in and bring Holly on. Holly, so
Hi.
good to see you again.
You too. Thank you for having
Well,
me back.
oh, everybody has just raved about you and can't wait to see you on the show again.
Uh,
And I know we were talking last time about things that you did after your near death experience that you didn't know why you were doing them. You talked about putting together, I want to say it was a package for people, a kit, and you put in a rose quartz heart and you
it was
put
for
in a
our
piece of,
doula. Yeah,
yeah,
the gift we gave at the table settings. It was a
yeah,
wood round ornament because it was around Christmas time.
that's right.
And in the bag we put rose quartz hearts, and you found
Okay,
yours.
that's where you can see it. Folks, this is what it looks like.
That's
I've got my
exactly what it
little
was.
rose quartz heart that this
Yeah.
is going to always remind me of Holly from this moment forward. So
Aw.
all
Well,
of
it's
you
about
should get
love,
the
so
rose
that's
quartz.
good.
Always brings love in its pureness for the heart. So if you
Yeah.
want to know anything about crystals, you can ask me, but I may not know the answer. But I love them, loved it. Well, all of my jewelry is made from various crystals. I got my amethyst on, and
Love it.
anyway, we will
So healing.
leave that healing aside. So, well, hey, I first want to say, first off, welcome, welcome, welcome. We have got Holly Porter, who is the absolute entrepreneur genius, and I'll tell you, extraordinaire doesn't begin to describe her. And those of you who were on the last show know that. And you share some wonderful, wonderful experiences with us with your near death experience, and some great heaviness. My heart for you, as we talked about you being in the hospital for, whoa, how many days was it? 70?
70. Yeah.
Ah, I just can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. And having to basically start everything over again, from breathing to swallowing to eating to moving. And I'm so, so grateful that that experience didn't take you from us, and that you are here with us to share your experience and stories to inspire all of us and to give us hope. So, yay, I'm excited to have you on again today.
Can't get
Well,
rid of me that easy.
well, hey, I know you had many out of body experiences and that you got to travel back many, many years. And so I want to just jump right in and ask you about that and about the spiritual transformation
Yeah.
experiences that you had. And I will let you start where you want to, but I definitely have lots of questions. So,
Sure, yes, I'll answer anything. So we're continuing from the last show. The last show we talked about the NDE, which is near death experience. So there's three different things. There's near death, and then there's a spiritual transformational experience, and then there's out of body experiences. If there's more, I don't know about them, but I didn't know about those three until about a year ago. And I hadn't listened to very many people's stories about them. So it was good because I felt like my experience didn't get tainted, right, by confusing
right.
it with others. And there was a lot of COVID fog going on, but what's clear is clear. And the out of body was interesting because I had a whole bunch of those, more than any. I mean, the others I just had one of, but out of body, I traveled, and I didn't go in forward in time. I went back in time. And it was interesting because where I would land was a town called Perwin, Utah. And there it's tiny. It's a little pioneer town.
Itty
It's about
bitty.
an hour from my home is all, but I never felt like I had any connection to Perwin. It was just an odd place to land all the time. And I talked about when I traveled in my bed.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, I told the story about how an ambulance hooked up to my room, so to speak, like a Connex type thing, their storage container, and it would
Yeah.
move me where I would go in my travels. And I mentioned this a little bit in the last show, that I believed that I took my bed with me because I think I believed that if I didn't go with my body, it didn't come with me, I wouldn't get it back. That
Right.
makes sense, right? So my bed went
Yeah.
with me. And so it would load us up and then take us on our travels. And I don't remember it happening like that all the time. I mostly remember going in my bed and going to these places, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I realized, after doing a little research, that's how I have found out and put a lot of the pieces to the puzzle of everything together
Right.
over the last couple of years. I realized after doing research that I knew this house that I was in. I knew it looked familiar. It's actually a museum in Perwin that the city owns now. And that's like the
Oh.
tour place. They do tours in it. And it was Jesse M. Smith. He was a pioneer. He never lived there that much, though. He had several wives because polygamy was big back in the pioneer days for the Mormons. And
All right, I got to stop you right there.
okay,
Everyone, Mormons do not practice polygamy now.
no,
And if a
no,
Mormon does, they will be excommunicated from the church. So, all of you
no,
who
no,
hear
wait.
Mormon and
From the church,
automatically, as soon as you hear Mormon and automatically think
yeah,
polygamist, not the case. Mormons are not polygamists. They were a
right.
long, long, long time ago because so many of the men died and they needed them to help take care of the women. And it wasn't illegal at that point. And when the
And women
government
couldn't
came
own
in,
land. They were being murdered, a lot of them,
yeah,
and they couldn't own the land. And so the men would marry the women because it
yeah,
wasn't illegal. And when they made it illegal is when it was changed, right?
yeah,
Yeah. But when you say the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because there's
right.
FLDS, other churches that do still practice,
Yeah.
even today, even in our area, they are around.
Yeah.
But our ancestors and our pioneers, relatives were polygamous, a lot of them on
Right.
certain sides of our families, including mine. So Jesse M. Smith was this, and I knew he was related. I thought he was a grandfather, but I wasn't quite sure how. So when I got home, we have a book. I looked in there and I found him, and he was my great, great, great grandfather. So I was in his home in Perwin, Utah, many times. Um, like I said, I did never see him. I don't remember having much interaction with people. It was more of a visual thing. So it's like when you see time travel shows, they go back there and they're there watching, but live. That's how it was.
Yeah.
So I didn't interact with anybody. Oh, I was reincarnated, nothing like that. I was like visiting and I was there. The biggest story about any of that stands out to me that was a little creepy. There were a lot of creepy things actually. And bad things happen in good families, right? We know that. There was
Well,
just
and good things happen in bad families. It just
right, right.
things
Yeah,
happen.
exactly. So no judgment here, especially with what I got told coming back with that. I'm not judging. It's just was an interesting observation of things and how things were being done. And there was a lot of interesting things to say the least. But this one particular thing I want to share was there was this creepy man. He almost looked Jewish, like he had that Jewish nose. I hope that's not politically incorrect. Um,
Well, every
and,
culture, every region of the country, every region of the world have
and
got a common look.
yeah, so
And
that's how
so,
it makes sense.
Italians, you can tell an Italian look.
Right,
You can
right.
tell an Asian look. You can tell, yeah, Jewish, and they all
Yeah.
have a look.
So there was okay. So he had a Jewish look about him. So no judgment there. It was his countenance that was very dark, and so I must have known what was going to happen, and then went back to time or just a little bit, like fast forwarded a couple minutes because I knew what was going to happen, and then I waited for it to happen because I knew. Does that make sense? So I was
Yes.
there and I'm standing there and the door opens and I know that in a couple seconds after the door opens and he's right there, right at my left shoulder,
Right.
I know something's going to drop and break and there's some chaos going on, but nobody's in there. There was some chaos going on. And I could feel his breath on me. I'm standing there and I'm praying. So nobody obviously could see me because he didn't see me, but I didn't know that. Like, I just remember this fear and this panic and this, like, I was scared. but I knew what was going to happen. And so he's there, and I'm feeling his breath as he walks in, and he's just like right here. And I remember counting 3, 2, 1, crash, like whatever fell and broke. And I remember him looking, and I felt him looking. I didn't see him looking because I was looking straight forward and I was frozen. And I remember just that fear of like, I was scared of him. Like he was very, very dark. And he right in my ear goes and shakes his head no. Freak the crap out of me. I don't know much more about that story other than there were just a lot of creepy things. I mean, obviously he wasn't, you see how white I am. He obviously wasn't part of my descendants, but maybe somebody married, maybe a stranger, because they knew that the husbands a lot of times were gone on missions or whatever for the church. Yeah. I don't know who it was, but I hope I never see him again. But I'll tell you what, if I do, I will know that face. I will know it. It was a scary thing. So that was, and then another thing that I remember clearly was they remodeled home. I went back there last December. They remodeled it about 3 times. Well, I looked it up and it was, well, no, I didn't look it up. I went there, and when they came and were telling me some things about it, it was 165 years ago. So that's how far back in time I went. So I knew that.
Holy cats.
Yeah. And then by then, when I was going to visit it, the same house, reconstructed, whatever, a lot of it was the original, but they had done add-ons and things. But there was a staircase that was to my left that was really steep. And I think it kind of turned, but you could still see when you look down, you could see the bottom, but it was dark. It was dark, but I could see the bottom. Right. So I remember that staircase, and I remember this eerie feeling then again coming over me, like there were science projects and test tube babies. That's like the thought that was coming to mind. All these horrible, icky things were happening in this basement, right? And who knows again who it was. May not have been anyone in my family. I don't know. But I remember seeing all this shattered glass at the bottom. They had broken stuff. I don't know. I just had this really creepy feeling. Well, when I went to visit it last year, that original staircase is still there. And I was like, that's it. And it was on my left side. They had 2 staircases because I remember I didn't pay attention to that one much because it wasn't very big. And like I said, it was super steep and it kind of spiraled down, but actual stairs, not like we have nowadays. And then on the other side of it was another set of stairs that you could tell were newer, went down into like a cold cellar type thing, right? So of course I went down there and checked everything out, but I was like, that is it. And she says, well, and after I realized all that, and this is it, she said, well, this is the original part of the house. That would make sense because this was built first, and it would have been 165 years ago. So she gave me this little book with some history in it and things that was interesting. And there were a lot of things I saw that have, like, there was a field, and there was, I mean, I feel bad that it's like I'm tarnishing my family or something, but like I said, we have bad things in our families, and I don't know who they were because I didn't remember seeing anyone that I like, oh, that was my da-da-da. But there was fields, and I remember out in this field, and then I'll tell you a funny story about one of my nurses about it. So there was this field, and there was an old shack thing out there. Well, now there's houses there. So when you go out there, I could see where it probably was off to the right. And it's funny because in my near death, do you remember the right side was the dark side?
Right.
And the left was the light.
Right.
I just realized that. So over to the right, the dark side, was this shack. And I just remember going, I don't even remember if I looked in because I remember the feeling was like that eerie guy behind me. It was just like took place in there. Horrible things.
Oh, wow.
And I was just like creepy. And I hurried and got away. But you had to go way out in the field, and this is shut. So back to the hospital for a second. I had this nurse that I'm pretty intuitive, and I was in a coma a lot of the time, but I remember asking my sisters, was there a camera in my room? So there's a camera so that doctors can like do telemed and stuff with you and stuff, but they don't have it on you where they could probably see if they go out and turn it on, they could see your room, whatever. But like they're not on all the time, at least at this hospital I was in. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And I was just curious because I remembered this one nurse creeped me out. It was crazy because I I told my sister, and she said, yeah, I didn't have a very good feeling about them either. And I don't know if they ever said anything. I found out now, just for people listening, if you're in the hospital and you don't like somebody that's working with you, they will, if you ask them to not have them there, they have to respect that. They won't bring them back. They told me if I would have said something to him, he would have never come back. And so I remember saying later, my sister, yeah, we kind of had a feeling about him too. And I said, I mean, because remember, they were changing me. I couldn't even move hardly. So I said, oh, I took care of him. I sent him out to the field. And of course, they wouldn't have known what I was talking about, right? I sent him out to that shack. I told them, horrible. But I mean, I laugh now. It wasn't so funny then. But at the time, I was like, I felt like I was violated or something. And I was going to get, I don't know. I'll get him before he gets me. I don't know what I was thinking because, I'm on a lot of drugs at this point. But so back to Parowan.
I have to stop you for just a second and ask you a question. Now, this house in Parowan, had you visited it ever before you went to the hospital?
Yes. One time we had a cousins camp years ago. Okay. So when my kids were little, and my kids are in their 30s. So we did. So when they were like under probably 10, 12 at the we had a cousins camp there and we did a tour, but they had renovated it since then. So I didn't remember anything about it because we had like 20 kids with us, right? And we were busy, but so I had one time. So I knew what it was. I knew the house. Like when I was there, I knew where I was. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So okay, so let's see. Those are some out of body. People have asked me do you remember hearing things when you were in your coma? Do you remember things that were being said or people's, because I know they were playing music. I know they were, like they'd have hymns on and things like that just to keep the peace in the room. And I said, well, the only thing I can correlate to that was I had a sister that was in the middle of buying an Airbnb. It was actually in Las Vegas, but I didn't know that. And I didn't know for about at least a couple of months after I got out of the hospital that she was doing this. But I must have overheard something because I remember I had an out of body in Parowan again, but it was like now times. So I knew I was in Parowan, but I was in this new, it was like a pioneer home, but redone Airbnb that my sister owned. So everything in it was brand new, but it was old fashioned, like remake stuff. But then on the right side of me was the hospital. So like it was almost connected. And so the reality was weird because I was in Parowan, but I knew the hospital was here. So that was a little odd, but I'm embarrassed to say this, but I had to confess to my sister. But I told her, I said, I felt so bad because I remember I peed your bed because I had all kinds of things going on with me. So I was UTIs. I mean, my body went through a lot. And I remember feeling so bad because they were these new linens in her Airbnb,
Oh no.
And it was just like some weird stuff like that. And I remember the anesthesia stuff. They gave you this thing called, I thought they called it Twilight. I'm going to have to ask a nurse, like some Twilight thing that would, because I remember there was a ding. There were lots of alarms going off all the time, but I remember this particular ding and there was something about it I didn't like. And I asked the nurse and she said, yeah, because I had so much anxiety and PTSD, all that stuff was being created while I was in the hospital. And she said, yeah, it's like at 5:30 in the morning, it goes off and it gives you a boost of juice of good stuff, I guess, to make you happy. I don't know. What she said. This was in real life, by the way. And so she goes, do you not like it? And I'm like, I didn't like it. I didn't know why, but I didn't like it until they quit giving it to me. And then my anxiety went crazy. And they were saying to my sisters, are you sure she wasn't on anxiety meds because she's really bad? So anyway, that was just some crazy correlations. So I think that somehow she was probably doing her deal, having conversations while she was in my room. And I overheard things and created, some things around that. So there's some things that I think, there were probably dreams, but a lot of the out of body happened a lot. So, just some crazy stories. So that was that.
Because you kept your bed with you then. I can probably adequately or accurately, that's what I meant, accurately predict that you didn't like hover over your body and look down on yourself then.
No, I never remember that. Just if someone didn't listen to the first one, I had been told in this hypnosis session, I had which I already knew, but he said it. And when he said it, it just reaffirmed. He said, more will be revealed to you when the time is right. So there's more that I know, I don't know, that I don't remember.
Right.
And I'm okay with that. And I think maybe some of that stuff happened. Maybe it didn't. I don't remember being in my room, looking down on my body. I just remember, like the beginning of my NDE, leaving in my hospital bed with other people in their hospital bed who I think were dying, and going, to this great place. And so
Yeah.
that was that. But okay, you want the spiritual transformational experience?
Oh, please, yes.
Okay. I hope nobody's judging all these crazy stories. I'm being pretty vulnerable. There are some of those things I have never said out loud. well, outside of my family, my crazy family, apparently. I don't know.
My mom would say, everyone's queer but thee and me, and sometimes I wonder about thee. And in her time frame, queer meant a little odd. So
Yeah, aren't we all?
yeah, we're all a little odd.
What's normal, actually, right? I
Yeah,
I always say I want to feel
there is
normal.
no
What's
normal.
normal? In fact,
Crazy is normal.
I think so. Someone told me, I think earlier today, actually, they were saying how your baseline to your health. So, like, as far as COVID was concerned, your baseline, wherever you were when you got COVID, was your baseline. So, if you got it more than once and you just kept getting worse, wherever you were each time is the best you're going to get, more than likely. So, if you had some health issues, then got COVID and got bad, like I really didn't, I was super healthy. So my baseline, I feel like I'm about 85%. My baseline is still way better than what I am now, right? But anyway, just a little side note. Okay, the spiritual transformational. This was what I had painted, was this experience it's 6 foot by 4 foot. It's huge. And it only could have 26 people in it. And there was way more, but I had this vision painted. So this is what happened. My cousin, who's more like a sister, she lives in Arizona. My husband couldn't come to the hospital for the first 3.5 weeks because he had COVID. They wouldn't let him in. And then when he could stay for a couple hours because he didn't have any energy. If you had COVID, you know the fatigue, right? It's real.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Well,
it hangs on. Sometimes I still experience COVID fatigue, and I didn't have COVID like you did. So,
well, you don't have to. People have long COVID that never even had symptoms of COVID. They just tested
yeah.
positive and now they have long COVID. So I'm the extreme. Long COVID can happen to anyone. There's 100 million people now. So it went
Are
from
you
6
saying long,
long
LONG, or
COVID,
lung,
LONG, long COVID,
LONG? I
or
say I
post
have
COVID condition.
lungs. It impacted my
Oh,
lungs.
yeah,
So I mean, they're not bad, but when I climb stairs or go uphill, I
yeah,
definitely get winded.
yeah.
And it's like I
Morning.
can walk forever on level ground, but get me up an incline, and I'm like,
Yeah. No, I think you're a lot of people, and I think they just didn't correlate that it it started when they had COVID. A lot of people just aren't
yeah,
realizing their new autoimmunes, cancers. I've had melanoma twice since I had COVID. So the long COVID
no.
is no joke, but people are getting better. Some people probably never will, but honestly, I think it goes to the mindset thing we were talking about. It really is. You really can control a lot of things with your mind if you want to, right?
Yes,
So
yes, you can. You and I know that.
we do, yeah. Well,
we're
okay. Oh, go ahead.
I just have to tell the audience, we're both certified hypnotherapists. We both are NLP experts. We both talk about mind programming and mindfulness and all the time. And we met at an event, a speakers event, a seminar, I should say, at a seminar for a person who that is their forte and have been doing it for a million years. And so, yes, we are heavily into that. And I totally believe that it's 80 to 90% mindset and 10-20% hereditary. And it's just the way it's going to be.
Right. I agree. I just, yeah, thank you. Um, okay. So the spiritual part. So the cousin sends a text to my sisters, but only she didn't know which one was with me because they took 24-hour shifts with me. And I don't remember who was there either that read it to me. I think it was Jan. And she said, I don't normally talk about these kinds of things or experiences in a text, but I know Holly's not doing well right now. and I just feel like you need to read this to her. So she read it to me, and the gist was she was praying for my husband and I and our well-being and to get healed. And all these spirits basically came around her, and she asked, may I have their names? Like, who's here? And one by one, she got the names. And so she, said all this in the text. And then she said, I just want Holly to let her know there's people across the veil too praying for her and her well-being. And, didn't say an outcome, just left it at that. So I must have got put back in a coma because I was doing not well. And I remember days that, hey, this really sucks. And if I'm not going to get better, then get me out of here, because this is not cool. And I'm suffering. I was.
Right.
And that particular prayer, I remember being angry. I remember it because it was like that sister rivalry. And my thing was, I'm the one suffering. Why is she getting that and I'm not?
Yeah. Why are they
Why did
talking
she,
to her and not
and I
me?
said, why did she see that? But she felt that. I'm a seer.
Yeah.
She said, not me. It was kind of like, meh. And at that point, everything shifted. So at that point, my mom, who had passed away about a year and a half before this, she came to me a lot, but she was on my right side. And it's interesting to hear that confirmation from a lot of other people that say, your mom was there with you. And they've commented many times she was on your right side. It is nice to have those confirmations to think you're not nuts, right? And I was like, yeah, I knew that. I mean, I didn't act surprised because I already knew, right? So she came
Yeah.
to me, and this is when she said what so many people say with their experiences. This is when I thought this whole spirit experience was a near death experience, until I found out it was a spiritual transformational experience. And she said, Holly, it's not your time. It's not your time to be here. You need to fight. And when she said the word fight, then all these passed on relatives. I have a brother that died, sister-in-law. I had a grandbaby that had just died 6 months before, but she was an adult, but I knew it was her. I had grandparents, aunts, uncles, all in white appear above my bed. And of course, my bed's there. I'm in my bed. And they all appear and they start chanting, fight, fight, fight. But the word fight, which I don't even like, is interesting. I don't even care for that word. But the painting's called Fight. That's the name of it. And they would say fight, and a whole other group of people behind them would appear. They'd say fight again. So then it was my husband and my kids and some friends and all these people, as far back as I could see, people, probably thousands. And I remember looking at faces thinking, who are you? Like, oh, I think now those were people that I was on all the prayer lists all over the world, from friends all over the world, had put me asking for prayers, and their families of families and friends of friends. And I think that's why I didn't know who they were. There were just so many people. But it was that moment that defined, I got it. I'm going to live. I can fight. All I needed to know, number one, is that I was going to live. I just needed to be told that, right? Because I didn't know. I didn't know what was going to happen. At that moment, I knew, and it was a long journey. I was still in the hospital many weeks after that. But at that, I just knew I would live. And so it brought that will and fight in me, right? And to know how many people, I mean, to only let me paint 26 in there, that was tough because I'm from a family of 9. And, we
Yeah.
have 8 combined children and lots of grandkids. I mean, I get 26. So that was really a hard decision when I was creating that for myself. That painting would mean nothing to anyone else, but it means everything
Right.
to me. I mean, it was the shift when living and dying, right? It was that
Wow.
moment where you got this. I don't know, that's all I needed to know. And so that was it. That was that. And it was just so much confirmation, and the love and the support I felt carried me through, for sure.
Well, these are all really different types of experiences, obviously.
Yeah.
But if you were to really explain to those of us who are novices and really don't know, because I mean, to me, everything's a near death experience. And I don't know the difference other than what you're telling me. But if you were to tell me more in depth of what the difference is between the three of them, how
Mhm.
would you explain that to us?
Well, I'm no scientist, and I probably am not the greatest with words, but in my heart and soul, I feel like out of body, kind of like astral traveling, I feel like you could create that. You can create that in hypnosis. You can create that in a meditation. You can create that in a dream. Like I feel like you could put yourself in the astral traveling out of body state and experience and go places. And I feel like when I had the hypnosis session to clarify the near death experience, I feel like that's probably more where I was. I was out of body, I was astral traveling. That's what I
Right.
that in that time in that realm. The spiritual clearly clearly it was a spiritual experience, right? With all the heavenly beings being there and being
Yeah.
given a message. I feel like a message that puts you back on track or whatever. I feel like that's more of that spiritual transformational experience where I mean other people's have been there's all kinds of stories and now that you know the difference after listening you can go probably YouTube spiritual transformational experience or out
Yeah.
of body experiences and there's some crazy stuff I think out there too, right? We're all a little
Yeah.
crazy. We talked about that already. But I think, and then the near death to me, that's also you're out of your body, you know, but I feel like a near death shows you possibility, maybe. So out
Okay.
of body maybe is an experience, and I'm making this up as I'm thinking of it because I hadn't really been thinking of this. So it's a good you're asking me. So out of body is an experience of where for me it was time travel, right? It was back in time, experiencing something that was happening, but watching it like a movie. Your
Yeah.
death was a heavenly place, like the possibilities of this is going to be when you're going to be, right? Yeah, and the spiritual to me is I think a combination of the two, I would say.
Yeah. A combination of the two and more emotional.
Yeah. Spiritual and emotional. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I haven't heard, I mean, I haven't listened to a lot of people's out of body or spiritual. I've only really listened to much NDEs for some reason.
Well,
I don't know. Speak to
that's
me.
people talk about, and I
Yeah.
think that of all of them, NDEs, for the sake of those of us who have no clue that there
Yeah.
are different types of experiences that you have, and
Yeah.
and
Or
that's my opinion. I don't know that for a fact, but
yeah. Well, I know just about 6 months ago that I had an out of body experience before. I think I've had a couple, but one in particular that came to my mind. And I was little. I would say I was maybe 5, 6, 7, pretty young. And I remember being super upset. And more than likely, I had two bully best friends. My best days were when they were fighting because I had two best friends to pick to play with, right? The rest of the
yep,
days, I came crying home, crying all the time. They were just mean girls. And so I'm guessing it was one of those days, but extreme. And I also had hypoglycemia that I didn't realize until I was an adult. So I think there were times that, you know, your blood sugar drops or you're having some physical issues that you
yeah,
just didn't know about. I looking back, it's interesting how after you've gone through something, you look back and you see it so much different. But I remember being out in the backyard and I remember kind of was throwing a temper tantrum because I think I was even hitting my head on the lawn. I was laying on the lawn and hitting my head. And I remember right there, not very much grass grew. So it was probably pretty hard. It was in Las Vegas. So who knows
oh
what
yeah,
time of year,
definitely pretty hard.
really hard grass and dirt. And I remember getting like everything got really tingly and fuzzy. And I remember being out watching my body. That was the only that I remember that happening and when I was a kid. And I thought, oh my gosh, I had forgotten all about that happening. I didn't remember, but so it wasn't yeah. So I did experience it, but just I don't know. I think we just forget things. And sometimes I think we do out of our astral traveling when we're having dreams. If you have something that happens or that you see and then it happens, right? I mean, we all have gifts. Some people
Yeah,
just ignore it or they don't want to see, it, right? But open your mind to possibilities. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? As long as it's not evil.
I like that.
You're not inviting evil.
Open it to possibilities, and and set yourself up
Yeah.
to have these experiences. And you know, I meditate. I did a show a while back on meditating, but we think of meditating as sitting in the corner with our hands like this, going which is a form of meditation. But there's so many other ways to meditate just by breathing and paying attention to your
Yes.
curling your toes and uncurling your toes, and just focusing on that for a moment. I liked it back when I was doing public speaking pretty much full time. One of the things I like to teach for stress control was to meditate, but I'd have them meditate 4 times a day for 1 minute each time.
Yeah.
And
Anybody can
what
do
I
that.
tell people to do is close your eyes and taking a deep breath, and then picture something that makes you smile or laugh. And for me, it's those babies laughing on YouTube. My kids as cats getting trapped in paper bags. I mean, it's whatever makes you laugh and smile.
Yeah.
And I would have the audience do that, close their eyes and make picture something that laughed. And I never went more than 20 seconds, but within that 20 seconds, the entire room was smiling, and
Yeah.
a good portion of them were actually laughing.
Nothing.
I mean, and it was magical. But I say, do it in the parking lot at work before you go in the morning. Go out and do it on your lunch break.
Yeah. I love that.
Do it in your driveway when you get home at night, because you don't want to bring the traffic into your house with you. And do it before you go to bed. And that meditation, that actually clears your mind up, and it also puts you in a happy mood
It does.
because you've been smiling and laughing consciously and subconsciously for a full minute. And I'm just like, turn your timer on and have it ding. I
Yeah.
don't care.
I love that. Well, and it
But
can think of the same funny moment. I mean, I can relive something. Who was the actor that was on the roller coaster and got hit in the face by a bird?
Fabio,
I'm sorry, I will still laugh.
he was the Fabio.
Yes,
I remember
that's
that.
why it was so funny. And his bleach blonde hair, and I was a hairdresser,
Yeah,
so it's just like
long flowy
fake all
hair.
the way.
Yeah.
It reminds me of some of the well, okay,
Well,
there's judgment. But I just want to say my ex-husband, oh my gosh, he was so upset that I laughed so hard when that happened. They kept showing the replay over and over, and I was dying. I mean, I just found it so funny. And it wasn't funny that it happened to him. It was sad it happened to him, but
it
it
just
was
looked funny.
it'd be like Barbie getting a bird flying over and pooping on her head. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that would be funny. Well,
Anyway,
and when I do embarrassing things, I always laugh, and I tell everybody, if it happened to you, I'd laugh. So if it happens to me, I better laugh too.
that's right.
My favorite funny, you'll like this one, Holly, and then we'll get back to the topic of hand. I was in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I'm running through the airport to go get my luggage because I'm in a hurry to get to the hotel to set up for an event.
Right.
And my bag caught on something on the floor, and it yanked me, and the bags fell down. I fell down, but I not only landed on my face, but somehow I rolled up, and the top of my head, not my forehead, the top of my head went onto the ground, and I rolled back down. And so, I mean, it was this vroom, vroom.
Oh
And
my God.
everybody's like, "Lady, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just embarrassed." I didn't go get my luggage right away, by the way. I went and sat in a chair and waited for everybody in that corridor to be gone. But to this day, I say, I wish somebody recorded that on their iPhone or their tablet or
Okay.
something, and please send it to me.
Chances of
Because,
that happening nowadays are pretty good,
yeah,
especially at airports, right?
please send it to me, because I'm sure that had to look hysterical. I'm sure of it. And I would love to be able to laugh at the actual view of what it looked like, because
Sure.
my imagination of it is like, oh my gosh, the weebles wobble, but they don't fall down thing.
They're
So,
probably still laughing.
anyway, so it's okay that you laugh at Fabio.
Oh gosh,
You
yeah.
weren't alone. We still loved him as a human being and as a model, but it was funny that he got hit in the face. And it was funnier, and everybody forgive me for saying this, but it's my truth. It was funnier because he was a model and so good looking to the
Yeah.
world that, you know, if it had happened to anybody else, we'd have gone, "Oh wow, that's too bad." But it happened to somebody that's
Fabio.
and it's like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, broke his nose, and now he's not going to be able to model for however long." And anyway, so
Terrible,
yes,
but
that's
anyway.
mean of us, but I love
You have
it.
to find the humor.
You got to find the humor. Well, and you know what? Praying is another form of meditation.
Yeah, it's true.
And when your mind wanders, that's okay, because if your mind wanders when you're trying to focus on one thing,
Yeah,
it's your subconscious telling you you need to let these things go, or you need to acknowledge them and give them
I love
voice.
trick
So,
for that.
yeah.
So not trick, solution. So somebody shared this with me one time, that when you're meditating, if you trying to keep those thoughts out of your head, if they come in, picture a cloud coming by and it picks up that thought and carrying it away. And if you get it again, a cloud comes by, it picks it up. You know what I mean? Because it's light, it's airy, and if it takes
Yeah.
it away, then it's like it takes the heaviness away of just because if you're ADHD like me, man, there's my husband tells me he never wants to be in my head. He doesn't want to touch anywhere near my head.
Yeah.
It's way too crowded in there.
Yeah, me and I talk in circles, and it all makes sense to me. And people are like, "How did you get from here to here and see a correlation?" And I'm
I
like,
like when people can track you. You're doing it and they
it's
get
like,
it. I'm like, you're my people.
you are my people. I love you. Yeah. And you have to practice keeping a straight story. Yeah. See, and
Yeah,
I've already gotten you off track of your story, but
that's all right.
that's, the other thing I am besides ADHD is CDO, and that's OCD in order like it should be. So imagine somebody who's ADHD and
Oh yeah.
OCD.
Oh
It
yeah.
is it's an interesting place in my head to be.
Yeah.
So,
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
but I think your experiences are encouraging for me and give me hope. It's like there is more. There
Yeah.
is after death. There is something to experience. There is something to learn from our past. There's
Yeah.
something to learn about the world and the universe and energy. And
Right.
I find that fascinating.
I wanted to say too, I've had a couple people whose kids died in a coma. Like they were in a
Oh,
coma and then died. And they asked me an interesting question. They said, "Do you remember? Well, look what I just told you. You know what I mean? What I've been sharing
yeah.
on 2 hours worth of shows." And I think, we don't get to talk to the ones that didn't come back. We don't know. I mean, it was their
Yeah.
time, right? I was told it wasn't my time. Like,
Right.
you need to
Well,
fight.
everyone that comes back is told that it's not your time.
Right. So and we don't get to talk to the other ones because they didn't come back.
Okay,
But
yeah,
it was because their mission here was done, right? Their
yeah,
contract was over. Or if they did get to choose, which I'm sure some do, oh
yeah,
my gosh, when you see where you are, there's why on earth would you ever, why on earth, why in heaven, why in heaven ever come back to earth is what I'm trying to say. If you
yeah.
see heaven, I mean, especially the world, the way it is, I've never been young. And did you see my post that I put about, oh no, I'll butcher it. Hold on. I'll tell you what it is. Cause my
Yeah,
brain,
tell me what it is. I don't think I saw it.
it's what I want to say right now. So hang on, I'll just read it. I put it on a couple days ago on Facebook. Um, Once you lose your fear of dying, you lose your fear of living. And that's true. I never was afraid to die. I remember my mom wasn't either. She died from
Yeah,
Parkinson's and lived with it for a long, long time. And I remember that conversation with her. Yeah. And I could go. Right now, I wouldn't want to go just because now I feel like I have a calling and
you
I
got
have
a
a mission
calling.
and this is what you're doing. Where before I didn't feel like I had that purpose as much.
Right.
And even people say, "Oh, but what about your kids? They need you." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I can help them way better from the other side. I'll have more power. Now
Yeah.
they're adults. They don't have to listen to me."
You're just mom. What does she know?
But
She's an old and
as
senile
their
lady.
other
You know.
side person, yeah, I feel like you
Yeah.
can have a lot more influence maybe than you can being
Yeah.
alive. That's sad, but
You know, you get the whisperings or you feel somebody's there, and I have a guardian angel. I am a firm believer of that because I have somebody that will sometimes shake me and wake me up during out of a dead sleep. I hear them call my name and nobody's at home.
Wow.
I've had people this one, they will sit on the bed next to me and there'll be an indentation on the bed and I
Wow.
can feel them and people are like, your bed just dented. And I'm like, yes it did.
Yeah.
And I think we have guardian angels, and I think that we can be guardian angels from the other side to help those that we love or whoever maybe we're assigned to. I don't know how that all works. But
Yeah.
like you, I've never been afraid of death. And it's like I'm not suicidal. I don't wish to go tomorrow, but
Right. Yeah.
when my time is right, my time is right. And I don't fear living because I'm not afraid of dying. And there's so many people that fear to live
Yeah.
because they're afraid it's going to kill them. And
Yeah. It's like the
I've
fear
been,
of success and the fear of failure.
yeah, they don't want to succeed for fear they'll lose it all. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big one. You'll have
I
to tell
know.
us about that one.
I've always had those fears. I've done so much work on fear of success and fear of failure. Yeah,
Right,
it's interesting because you think you'd have one or the other. I've had both some for so long, and it's interesting how when you just know, like I've never been so passionate about what I know I need to do, what I know I need to build, what I know happens after that. And I mean, it's like I have all these end results now that I
right,
can see, and I just have to, like Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind, work
right.
backwards, put all those pieces to the puzzle in. And there's so many lessons along the way that sometimes when we're in it, we don't realize. It just feels pretty crappy at the time, and we don't realize till later when we look back and think, you know, uh, if I would have had this information or I would have been in this mental state, I could have made better choices about something. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
forgiveness works that way a lot too. Is we have to get to the point where we calm down about things. I
yes.
mean, I know my sister told me one time, she said, I think it's a gift. Speaking of me, she said, I think it's a gift that you forget all these little things that people have done to me, where she's like more the protector, and she's like, she didn't forget. And I think that is a challenge when people are struggling in their relationships, whether they're married or not. And then you go to family about that person, they don't forget that stuff, right? You tell them, they see, they know, and then you forgive them, you've worked it out with them, and you want to put it behind you. But I
Well,
think we have to be
you love
careful what
them.
we confide in. Yeah.
Yeah, you love them, so you're willing to let it go. The other
Yeah.
people don't love them, and so they will hold on to it.
Yeah. And I'll tell
So,
you, forgiveness, we all know it's for us. It's not for who we are forgiving, right? It really is for our
yeah,
peace of mind. And I think it's just things can shift like that. Really,
yeah.
if you want to get through something, it's up to you to do it. You could do it.
I
I
don't
think.
remember the exact quote, so as I paraphrase, bear with me. But someone, and I can't remember who even, it was probably Marshall, someone said that a habit is changed instantly once you decide you want it changed.
Yes.
So they say 21 days. Well, yeah, but it's on that 21st day you finally decided enough's enough.
Right.
But
Says
the
who?
second, yeah, why do you have to wait 21 days? So I found that,
That's a lot of the same. Think and Grow Rich teaches that too, about
yeah,
decisions. It's as soon as you
yeah,
decide, it's instantaneously.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. You just have to
I
decide.
I want you to talk a little bit more about your book that you mentioned last week. I put this up here because it's not yet out, but it will be real soon.
Yeah.
And I want everybody to have this on the forefront of their mind and watch for me and or Holly to post that the book's out so that you can go get it. But Retreat Forward, my journey from NDE to CEO.
Yeah, we were talking about the last show, retreat forward is kind of opposites, right? When you
Yeah,
retreat, you're back one way and you're forward. But we talked about, yeah, it being like a slingshot, right? A setback,
right.
the beginning of a comeback. A slingshot goes backwards before it can project forward. And I think for me that's because my software is for retreats. That's where that name came
Right.
from, because it's part of the
Right.
story. And a lot of these stories I told her in the book, plus a lot of other, we have,
Yeah.
oh gosh, probably 12 hours of recordings that we did to get the story
Wow.
out and clear.
Wow.
And yeah. And I do bounce around because I remember stuff and then I'll forget something. And maybe I did that before COVID. I don't know, but long COVID's no joke. So that's the way it is. But I'm excited for it. I have 15 that I'm either they're
Right.
either just mine or I'm part of somebody else's compilation.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I needed or wanted any more books. And it was interesting because there's two. There's this one. I don't know what the other one is, but when I came out of my coma, I knew I had two more books to do. So we'll
Yeah.
see. I don't count any. If I'm in a compilation, I just was in a piece book with 100 other
That's
women.
what I say. People are like, "Oh, but you've been in this many books," and I'm like,
Yeah, yeah,
"Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I don't, it's like I never wrote any of my books for a purpose, and I definitely didn't write to make money. That wasn't
yeah."
what my intention
Uh,
was.
I I wrote them for a purpose, but not for money. Because unless you're Stephen
Yeah,
King, you're not going to become a millionaire from
or New
writing
York
books.
Times bestseller, which
Yeah,
about $250,000 to do. It's
yeah,
all a game. It's all a game. But I was proud of myself for each one that I did, and it. I mean, it had a purpose at the time, but like
yeah,
real purpose and intent. Like this to me, I want it to be a book that people read and go, "I'm buying a copy for every one of my friends for Christmas," or something like that, where they're just
right,
like, "This is powerful." There's so many, life lessons, relatable things. I mean, right? Everybody doesn't have all these near death type experiences. I get that. But there's still relatable things. Everybody's going to relate to COVID. Everyone's going to relate to, life challenges because we all have them. Nobody gets out of here
yeah.
alive. So let's make the best of what we have and just be kind people and love on people. And what was the word? Love them where they're at.
I love that. All right. I want people to know how to get in touch with you too. If you guys want to know more about her story, you want to have her on your podcast, you want to do a retreat or have a property you want retreats done at, go to hollyporter.com and you can email her at holly@hollyporter.com. And so it's real easy to remember because her name is Holly Porter. You're like, okay, Karen, that's just corny. Yes, it is, but
Okay.
be easy to remember. So if you want to get in touch with Holly, go to hollyporter.com or just email her at holly@hollyporter.com. And Holly, you're amazing. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for being my friend. You're
Thanks for being
somebody
my
that I
friend.
cannot talk to for a couple of years. And the moment we talk,
Yeah.
it's as if we'd never been
Yeah.
apart.
And that is
And
rare. That doesn't
you
happen a lot.
you
I love
bring
that
me
too.
great love and joy to my heart. So I appreciate
Same.
that. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And mwah, for all of your help and inspiration. Well, it's time for us to begin to wrap up. And I, like always, want to remind you all that we have Karenisms on Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. I said it right this week. And we have the Power Surge, where I have wonderful guests like Holly. They tell us their life stories or life journeys, and we are able to gain hope and inspiration from those journeys. And that is also at 10 a.m. Did I say Thursdays? I meant Wednesdays. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Mountain, or 1 p.m. Mountain. See, now I'm thinking about the last time. 10 a.m. Pacific, which is also 1 p.m. Eastern time. For those of you who have to count forward or backwards, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern time. But yeah, we have great guests, and so you'll want to join us on Wednesdays at that time in their live. Prefer you do it on YouTube. YouTube is Karen, or excuse me, it's Dr. Karen Perkins. Dr. Karen Perkins on YouTube. That way you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, just about anywhere. Um, so that being said, make sure you like this show and you subscribe and be sure to leave comments for me and for Holly. And we love you. Mwah, and ciao for now.